Look, I realize it's the wrong sport, but same state, so we went with it because today we're talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Um, Obviously, the headline being bringing in Rudy Gobert for a questionable amount of draft capital, along with recently drafted Walker Kessler, Pat Bev, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Ball-Morrow. And so we've talked a lot about what this means for the Jazz going forward in acquiring those picks and that youth. But now it's like, what does it mean for Minnesota? It seems the general consensus is they overpaid for Rudy Gobert, but the optimistic kind of lens here is, all right, well, they just acquired, one of the best rim protectors in the game, all defensive, highly decorated, big man, and you add him to a roster that just was 7th in the West. You imagine, he's under contract for a while, this kind of window of 3 to 4 years. You'd hope you'd at least, make the playoffs, improve upon this past year. And, you technically didn't give up any, high profile starters. It was all draft capital for the most part. Jared Vanderbilt, talented young guy, defensive, rebounding kind of specialist. That hurts a little bit. Not sure if he had to be included. But, you're looking at a starting lineup with Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony-Towns, Rudy Gobert, and, that trio right there, talent-wise could probably go toe-to-toe with most trios in the NBA. That's optimistic. You figure you're going to make the playoffs. Hopefully those picks are mid to late 20s. And, we look back on this and maybe it won't matter at all. The Utah, none of the guys they select turn out to be anything. That might be best case scenario for Minnesota. Whether that actually happens, unlikely. But the thing is, too, is as we've seen the NBA transition to more small ball, centers, especially in the playoffs, have had a tough time staying on the floor, especially defensively. And Rudy Gobert has kind of become the poster boy for this kind of phenomenon in terms of having a big man who you can draw out to the perimeter on defense, take him away from the rim, forcing him either to help at the rim or basically give up a wide open corner three. And in the case of Rudy Gobert, he's not going to punish you offensively, taking advantage of that small ball mismatch in the post or on the glass. It's really hard. And, as we've transitioned to that, Minnesota's kind of zagged here and like, no, we're going to basically play two centers, more or less. Now, Karl Anthony-Towns, built like a center, not necessarily plays, more of like a stretch five, one of the best three-point shooting big men ever. And so, I could see him playing the four and being able to be more around the perimeter, still doing pick and rolls, pick and pops, things like that. Similar with Gobert. Not so much the pick and pop part, though. The thing is, like, if you're playing Minnesota and they have a lineup with Towns and Rudy Gobert, you're gonna be able to draw one of them out on the perimeter. One of them's going to have to guard, probably a wing. If you go small, you can draw them out to the perimeter and probably beat them off the dribble, get a weird mismatch, something like that. And then defensively, you put maybe your weakest defender, your weakest wing on Rudy Gobert and try and force him to beat you, and then put your best defender, your best front court defender on Karl Anthony-Towns. And it's like, did we really improve anything? How is this any different than Karl Anthony-Towns and Jared Vanderbilt in the front court? because Vanderbilt and Rudy Gobert offensively are pretty similar in terms of they're relatively limited in their offensive skill set. Gobert obviously gives you an upgrade defensively, and maybe in the regular season, teams aren't going to be able to take advantage of it as much as in the playoffs in, a 7-game series where you're adjusting game to game, trying to poke and prod the other team's defense, trying to figure out what works. Gobert presents kind of a vulnerability there that can't be understated. And maybe, obviously Utah kind of just imploded these past playoffs. Their perimeter defense was, turnstile, to put it nicely. And so maybe if Minnesota has a little bit better perimeter D, they don't have to rely on Gobert so much at stopping everything in the paint. This roster isn't full of great perimeter defenders. Anthony Edwards could be elite defensively, but after that, D'Angelo Russell, probably not. They just brought in Kyle Anderson. Great pickup. Someone will be solid on the wing for them, some veteran experience, but defensively, solid, but not anything to write home about. And so, what does this team look like kind of down the stretch? Because D'Lo has been, in trading block kind of talks, expiring deal, not sure what they're going to do there. If this is a win-now team, probably want to get rid of him, but I don't know who you have to replace him. Maybe Jalen Noel, Jordan McLaughlin. They brought in, Bryn Forbes, Austin Rivers, Eric Pascal to fill in kind of the role players. But the depth, they lost a lot of depth in the Gobert trade, giving up, Pat Bev, Malik Beasley, and Vanderbilt. Those are 3 guys that got rotation minutes big time last year. So who's going to fill in those roles? Are those the guys? Bryn Forbes, relatively solid. Austin Rivers, maybe. Don't love it. But another veteran presence can't hurt in the locker room. So, I don't know. It's weird to think, what this team's going to look like, because I feel like they're going to have to figure out how to incorporate Rudy Gobert, because he's not necessarily your prototypical just plug and play guy. You're going to have to figure out what it's going to look like playing with Rudy Gobert offensively and defensively. Whether that results in kind of a slow start and maybe they hit their stride mid-season, potentially. It's just really hard to place them right now. If I were to guess, I'd say they'd probably be in the same range of the 7 seed. Maybe they go up to 6, 5, but the fact that they gave up that much in a trade, and I don't think anyone's going to, at least they might disagree with me and have them a little higher, but probably not that much higher. It's going to be hard to bet on the Timberwolves going forward, just because of some of the things that we've seen teams exploit with Rudy Gobert. So now they've inherited that problem. Who knows, Minnesota, man? I don't know how Timberwolves fans are feeling right now. I'd be slightly uneasy. You have Anthony Edwards, one of the best kind of young guys, if not the best young guy in the league. Have to feel good about that. Have to feel good about Karl Anthony-Towns, and now got some playoff experience under their belts. But this Rudy Gobert trade is going to get dicey. So excited to see what ends up happening here. Excited to see where they end up. Would love to hear what you have to say about where Minnesota might end up in the Western Conference. But that's going to do it for me for now. Take care of yourselves. Take it easy. And I'll see you next time.